Good morning and welcome to an episode of Unabashedly Resolute Institute podcast. I'm Wes Mullins, and this is the drive-in. This is where I ponder some theological or philosophical questions on my drive into my day job. My real job is doing Christian apologetics and writing. My day job to keep the bills paid is a little bit of remodeling, a little bit of painting, whatever I have to do to get through, and being a father and a husband and a homeschool teacher and a bevy of other things. So I want to talk to you about a logical fallacy this morning that is so deliciously simple and so deliciously engaged with and upon that most of our politics, most of our political discussion is exactly this. And it's called the Strawman. The Strawman argument is an argument that you make concerning someone else's argument or their position or their political beliefs, their worldview, and you reconstruct it in a way that makes it easier for you to defeat. So you strawman it, and think of it like this. Think of it like you taking a bunch of clothing, filling it full of straw, and then pummeling away at it, knowing that it can't fight back because it's not a real boy. And you pummeling this thing, and then dropping it to the ground, holding your hands up and saying, yes, I'm the champion, acting like you've actually done something. You've actually defeated something. You've defeated nothing. It's a caricature. It is an intentional misrepresentation of someone else's belief system so that you can easily defeat it and claim yourself the victor and prove once and for all that your enemy has been vanquished and they're a bunch of morons and idiots. That is what the strawman fallacy does. We use the strawman so much in our everyday language. Think of it in politics where you create this idea. Well, before we get there, let's do this. So you may ask, what's the alternative? What should one do? What should be the thing that the person does so that we don't fall prey to the strawman fallacy? Well, C.S. Lewis actually does something that is fantastic. And I suggest that everyone engage in this. This is something that I do as well, is we need to engage in Steelmanning our opposition. What that means is we need to understand precisely what it is that our opposition, the person who has a belief that's antithetical to ours, we need to understand and represent their idea as strongly as possible. We need to construct it in such a way that we may even find holes in their argument and beef it up, just so that when we are wrestling with it, we are wrestling with the real thing. We are wrestling with something worthy of our time and worthy of refutation. A straw man's not worthy of refutation because it's not a real thing. And if it's not a real thing, why would you spend your time trying to refute it? It would serve no purpose. It would have no meaning to refute something that's already inherently bad. However, if there is an argument that is awesome and one that may even make you contemplate whether yours is even correct, why, that's worth your time. So how does one, therefore, steelman an argument? How does one, can you give us an example, Wes, of steelmanning an argument? Sure. And Lewis does this all the time, and it's incredible when Lewis has a dialogue, when he takes a naturalist and he puts the naturalist against the theist, he does not make a weak, impotent version of materialism, because he himself used to be a materialist. He gives the the most stalwart juggernaut of materialism. He goes and says, who is the champion of materialism? I want to use their stuff. Because here's the thing. If you defeat a weak argument, what have you done? What have you done worth clamoring on about? It's like, well, yeah, it's a bad argument, so you didn't do much when you defeated it. It's kind of like when a father playing basketball with his son allows the kid to beat him, and the kid's like, yeah, I did this great thing. Well, no, somebody let you win. It's almost like someone let you win. It's like, well, you didn't really defeat your father. He let you win. And so when you create a straw man, it's like you're letting yourself win. You're letting yourself off the hook to do any real intellectual work. So here's an example of steelmanning an argument. Okay, so let's take something that everybody knows. Let's take everybody can relate to. Let's take economics. Okay, now people are like, well, I don't know about economics. Let's take economics. So on one side of the economy, we have a more equitable type of economy called socialism. That is the economic engine that runs Marxism, and it is the economic engine that ran Stalinism and Maoism. Those things. It's socialism. Okay. Now the economic engine that runs most of the Western world is considered capitalism. So when you hear pundits on the TV or radio talking about socialism or talking about capitalism, you need to be wary of whether they're using a fallacy when promoting each of these ideas. Okay? So if someone says socialism is government greed, well, that's not a correct representation of it. And so now what they're doing is they're pitting the government against the people, and they're saying it's us versus them. That's a straw man. That's not what socialism is. Socialism is the centralized control of all the means and productions inside an economy. That means the government regulates or owns. It either regulates the factories or owns the factories, and regulates so much that it dictates how much of a product is available to the public, and sets the prices for which those things are to be sold, and also sets the wages for the things that the employees are to be paid. And so it is a top-down regulated economy from the 30,000 foot perspective of the government. It is a I think what it's called a public-private enterprise. So there might be companies a person who owns a company, but they are regulated by what they can buy, sell, pay employees, and even what they can make. That they might own the company, but the company may be required to pay 80% taxes on any kind of profit. So it's not as if the company is making a profit off of this, because the government is regulating and controlling the means and production. That's a long-winded, short answer, and there'll be some out there say, "Well, you missed this about it." Yes, but I'm not trying to misrepresent. I may have missed something in my representation, but it was unintentional. I'm not intentionally misrepresenting. I am trying to give the most positive outlook on socialism that I can, because I want to see if it holds up against capitalism. Now, socialism in this government controls means and productions, this means that there aren't 45 different types of deodorant at the grocery store or at the department store, because since the government owns the means and production, they are limiting the amount of things to be done because, well, if the government's in control of everything, then therefore that means that they need to regulate everything. And so in so regulating, they're going to make things as simple and as efficient as they think is possible. So the goal is to have an equity of outcome and efficiency, meaning that you have 45 choices, and I've heard Bernie Sanders say this, so I'm pulling this from a Bernie Sanders economy. There should only be 3 types of deodorant or 2 types of deodorant. You don't need 45 types of deodorant. Just have 2. So they're saying that money is being wasted, capital is being wasted on all these products when capital could go into other things. So it limits choice, it also limits product. But it's doing so in a hope that there'll be less waste, there'll be less consumptive waste, and more investment into things, better use of the money. So they're looking for equity of outcome, equality of lifestyle, quality of life being equitable, and they're looking to make it more efficient. They're trying to beef up the efficiency. That's kind of what the dream of utopia of socialism is. We all have enough money, we all have enough food, we all have enough everything because the government's seen to that everybody gets a little piece of the pie. And if everybody gets a little piece of the pie, then everybody's fulfilled, and there's not one person eating 5 pies and one person eating crumbs. That's the goal, I believe, of socialism. You can correct me and say, well, Wes, you totally missed it. If I did, I'm sorry. I did not intentionally miss it. I gave the most positive, idealistic version I could of socialism. So, we also hear from those who are in opposition to capitalism say that capitalism is profit over everything. And you'll also hear a term called trickle-down economics, that if everybody at the top has a lot of money, they'll spend that money, and sooner or later that money will make it down to the very bottom echelons of society. So if I'm flipping this, then if I'm creating a straw man, I'm saying trickle-down economics creates the haves and the have-nots, and that it's a lie. The money never actually trickles down. Except capitalism is not profit at any cost. There is no economist who is a proponent of capitalism who would ever define it as profit at any cost. That is an intentional misrepresentation, because what it says is it's greed. Again, remember, socialism is government greed, whereas capitalism is individualistic greed. So it's greed, profit at any cost. And who have I heard say this? Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Ocasio-Cortez, I think. It's not Senator. Sorry, Representative Ocasio-Cortez said that capitalism is profit first, profit over everything. That is the main thing about it. It's not profit. It's not profit at all. In trickle-down economics, there is not a capitalist economist who would ever, at an academic or political level, say that capitalism is trickle-down economics, because that was a political straw man created, I believe, during the Ronald Reagan era, to misrepresent and to make it was an attempt to straw man Ronald Reagan's capitalist ideas. It was meant to take him down, and it's still hanging around, but it's not a real economic philosophy or theory. It's not. So capitalism is the free enterprise. It is the volitional transaction between an individual who creates a product and an individual who wants to purchase the product. So it is a volitional and willful transaction between two parties that are independent as much as we can be of regulation. So what I mean is, if I want to buy 500 flat screen televisions, I can do that if I have the money, and if the producer of the TVs has those TV screens. We can engage in a willful, honest transaction. I will trade him currency, and he will give me product. It's volitional. We were not coerced into it. We were not demanded we had to buy it. Because also under socialism, there's also, because there's only two types of deodorant, or two types of sugar, or two types of whatever, you will be coerced into buying one product or the other. And so therefore the corporations that you're buying those from absolutely cannot fail. Even if they create an inferior product in socialism, they are propped up because you have no choice but to buy the inferior product because you are limited. So socialism actually creates a lot of black markets because people don't want inferior products. If I buy 500 televisions from the guy who makes televisions and they are inferior, I can go demand that wasn't an honest transaction and that you misrepresented your product, and I can file lawsuits. I can get my money back. I can get those, or I can blast them on social media. I can tell all my friends, don't go there. I can give them negative press and publicity and tank their sales if they put out an inferior product. Now, if I'm getting ready to buy these TVs, let's say I'm going to buy a television, and I want this new television. It's 6D. It is holographic. But there's a person who comes out and says, oh, I have one that's 70, and it's actually superior and everything. I can go purchase that one. And someone comes through and says, hey, I don't have a whole lot of money. I will create an inferior product, and the person who doesn't have that much money can then, in fact, buy the inferior product if they want. But all transactions are willful. And if we do get to the point in capitalism where there are monopolies created, those monopolies can be broken up by antitrust laws. But it's only when they become a monopoly where they leave you no choice. So you see what happens a lot of times in capitalism. You see deregulation. When a company gets so large that they're the only product out there, the government will then call for a deregulation, and then suddenly a bunch of other corporations will pop up and get a slice of that pie. So that's my understanding of capitalism, socialism. I'm not an economist. This is how an average, typical person who's just done some study on the thing this is how I would Steelman both sides of the argument. Now, I do that because in Steelmanning the arguments, what I've been able to do in my life is I've actually been able to eradicate philosophies and ideas in my mind that were in fact inferior. There have been religious theological ideas that I've held close, and I have fought people, and I have strawmanned people, and I've attacked people with fallacies, and I have browbeat people with a belief that I thought was true. And then when I got into it, then when I began to steelman an opposing idea, what I found out was the idea that I was fighting against, once I steelmanned it, actually was the superior idea, and it brought me closer to truth, and it actually fulfilled me, and it actually answered the questions that my straw man argument, my inferior argument was lacking, the questions that it was presenting that it could not answer. When I steelmanned my opposition, I found that the steelman argument, the opposing argument, actually was more fulfilling, and it answered my questions. I dropped my inferior one, and I picked up the superior idea and inserted it into my worldview. and I begin to see the world much more clearly. And that's what this is about. You see, when it comes to politics, I had an eye-opening experience in 2016. It's changed the way I do politics. It's changed the way that I do life in a lot of sense. It changed my language in 2016. Now, I'll let you know right up front, my wife and I, neither one of us, well, I don't have to include her. I'll just scratch that. I did not vote for Donald Trump in 2016. There wasn't enough information about him. I did not vote for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton in 2016 either. I knew too much about her. So those were my political thinkings at the time. We voted independent. We voted our conscience. We voted our principles, as opposed to voting along party lines. A very interesting thing happened because we had 8 years under Barack Obama. And during those 8 years under Barack Obama, I actually became very political. One of the reasons I became very political is because I heard some lectures that Obama gave early on where, in fact, he dissed the United States Constitution. And I put a check on him, and I began to look very closely at his comments and at the things that he was doing to see if, in fact, he was trying to untether the threads, untether the moorings of our Constitution from America. And so it became very hyper political. And I did, in fact, fall in love with many strawman arguments against Barack Obama. Because I will tell you, and I know this about myself, I am more gullible than I should be, and I love a good conspiracy. Because, you see, I grew up reading detective novels and mysteries, and I'm always looking for the angle. I'm always looking for the pattern. I'm always looking to put things together. And so when I get bits of information, I'm looking for a solution. I'm looking for the beginning, middle, and the end. I'm looking for the solve. What does this mean? I'm looking for the meaning in everything. Because that's just how I'm wired. And what happened is I began to become a political rhetorical machine. Every conservative talking point, I would simply just regurgitate. Every negative stereotype and comment, not everyone, but a lot of stereotypes and comments about Barack Obama politically and progressives politically, nothing to do with race, nothing to do with anything like that, just the political philosophies, all the stereotypes involved in Democrats and progressives and liberals, I picked up on it. And I begin to spout these all the time. Then the most interesting thing happened to me is in 2016, when Donald Trump became president, immediately all of my liberal friends, all of my progressive friends started using the very same straw man arguments and many other fallacious arguments against Donald Trump that I had used against Barack Obama. And I mean verbatim. I mean, not that they were similar, that literally we simply replaced the name Obama and put Trump in place. I realized that I had been taken in, I had been hoodwinked, and that it would not happen again. To the best of my ability to overcome my gullibility and my affinity for conspiracies. I began to watch my language, and I suddenly started realizing that very often we will pose opinion as fact. And I said so many times, Obama is, Obama did, he was, this is. I use very definitive statements. And in the definity of my statements, I was claiming something to be fact. When in fact, it was simply a political opinion, and it wasn't even my opinion. So now, when it comes to politics, I say more often than not, it appears, it seems, it could be, it looks like Because when it comes to politics, when it comes to things that we don't fully know and we aren't masters in, we don't have PhDs in, we are doing something called abductive reasoning. And most of us do abductive reasoning for nearly everything that we do, and we don't even know what it is, and yet we're using this form of reasoning, and we think that it's deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning takes the small and goes to takes the specific and goes to the general. And inductive reasoning goes from the general and goes to the specific. Abductive reasoning says, here are a list of clues that I have. I'm going to infer the best possible explanation. And so most of our rhetoric, most of the things that we do are inferences to the best of our ability. The best explanation that we can come up with given the amount of information we have. So Wes, how do you overcome your affinity for conspiracies? I allow myself to be inundated with other bits of information that I might not otherwise be privy to. What does that mean? I try not to stay in my echo chamber. I try to listen to opposition. I try to put myself in a place where I can hear what other people are saying that believe things that I don't believe. And given those bits of information, with the philosophical process I have in Unabashedly Resolute, I can then therefore filter and distill out what bits of information in there are actually beneficial and what, as Sherlock Holmes would say, what clues are vital and what clues are incidental. And I can go from that. And then if there's something good in there that I've missed, I will then put that into my worldview. And there are things in there that I had that I thought were good and they turned out to be bad. I can then therefore eradicate that from my worldview. And I can continue to refine my worldview over and over and over. Every day is a refining. Every day is putting myself through the ringer. Every day is challenging my belief structures because I know that I don't have it right. I know that I fall into fallacies. I know that I have affinity for conspiracy. I know that I can be gullible. I know that I want to be comfortable in this life and I don't want to fight. And I don't want to contend, and I don't want to wrestle with people. And I just want to get on with my life. I just want to live my life. But I know in order to do that, that I have to have a clear lens. As clear as I can. The Apostle Paul says, we see through a glass darkly. And I hope through the process of reasoning, with the balance of the harmony of reasoning and imagination, that I can therefore maybe take a layer of opaqueness. I can make the opaqueness a shade brighter as I see through the glass. C.S. Lewis says, my idea of God is not divine. In fact, it must be broken over and over and over. And it's He who does the breaking of the image. C.S. Lewis was saying, I have this theology in my mind about who God is and what He does. But it's not God's idea. And He breaks it over and over and over and over again. And I must accept the breaking. I must accept the pruning. I must allow myself, I must allow my idea, my image of Him, I must allow it to be broken by Him. So there's no idea in my life that I hold so dearly that I will not allow it to be changed or challenged. I've learned in my life that is the worst way to go about life. That is the worst way to go about a philosophy or an idea. Because Carl Jung says it like this: ideas have you more than you have ideas. That's why I call them ideologues. An ideologue is someone who is so married to their belief that they will push it through regardless of the fact that it may be proven to be false. They will double down and they will push for the ideology. Jesus said it like this. He told the Pharisees, you encompass land and sea to gather one proselyte. To get one follower, you will go through hell to get one follower and convert them. And then you will burden them down with things that you wouldn't lift with your little finger, and you'll make them twofold more a child of hell than what you did before. And I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen so many times in Christianity, where they'll take someone who's a quote-unquote good pagan, as C.S. Lewis would call it. They're a good pagan, they take the step to Christianity and they get inside of a legalistic Christianity that actually turns them out to be not a bad Christian and worse, a bad pagan. So don't straw man the argument of the opposition of people that you don't know. Actually, steelman it. Give yourself the most impossible task to overcome. Give yourself the most impossible task to overcome in the opposition of the argument. Here's what I used to do. I used to listen to debates. I would listen to debates with William Lane Craig and Ravi Zacharias and whoever else. And I would listen to these debates against Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and Sean Carroll and Alex Rosenberg and Alex Krauss and some of the biggest, brightest names of the opposition. I would listen to their arguments. And you know what I found out? And it was fantastic. Here's what I found out. I found out that I did not need to be afraid of atheism. I did not need to be afraid of materialism or determinism. I did not need to be afraid of evolution. I didn't need to be afraid of the opposition. And actually, when pitted in a debate, the best ideas, the superior ideas, always effervesce to the top. And I would scoop off that idea that effervesced, and I'd say, ooh, I'm putting that in my worldview because that was good. It was purified in the fire of debate. It effervesced to the top. It is good. It wasn't a straw man. The opposition had every chance to attack it and fight it and knock it out. And actually, they fumbled around and they flittered and they fluttered and they couldn't come up with a good response. That must mean, if you can't prove something wrong, that must mean it might be right. And I take all the might be rights and I put them together because once I eliminate, as Sherlock Holmes says, the impossible, all that's left, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. I would say at least it must lead closer to truth. And so our responsibility is not to discern truth from everything. Our responsibility is to find truth. Our job and our responsibility is to eradicate every falsehood and every lie, so that what we're left with is more true than not. And then we can wrestle, and then we can prune, and then we can distill and take the things that are more true and make them more true still. And so at the end of the day, at the end of our lives, what we may have engaged in, what we may believe, what we may hold as our worldview, what the lens through which we see the world may actually get us closer to that thing that which we call truth. And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. And that's what we're searching for. We're searching for Jesus. We're searching for truth. Truth is a person, not a proposition. And we find truth through relationship. We find truth through forgiveness, through grace, through mercy, not through vengeance, not through justice. I'll say this, who am I to call out for justice? If I get what I deserve, it's hell. I pray others don't get what they deserve. I pray there's mercy for us all. You guys have a great day. Further up and further in.